Hi, this is Nicole Roberts Jones, and welcome to Amplify Your Brilliance. What I know for sure is that one of life's greatest gifts will meet you when you go after your more. And so here is where I share with you thought-provoking insight and behind-the-curtain conversations with women who have reached the pinnacle of success because they went after their more. And I really want you to get this. One idea from these episodes can make a remarkable difference, not just in your business, your career, but in your life. Also, make sure you join the conversation in our Facebook group. Go to thebrilliancetribe.com. Now grab your pen as we begin today's session of Amplify Your Brilliance. Hi, this is Nicole Roberts Jones, and I want to start this episode by reading a quote by Terry Tempest Williams. And it says, "The eyes of the future are looking back at us, and they are praying for us to see beyond our own time." Now, as this episode is being launched in March, which is Women's History Month, and we're coming directly out of February, which is Black History Month, as I read that quote, it brings one question to my mind. And that question is, if our ancestors could come back in time, what would they say? What would they say to us? See, whenever I ask myself a powerful question like this, I'm forced to take an introspective look about where I've been and where I'm going. See, it makes me think of all that our ancestors went through so that we can make all of our dreams come true. And when I say ancestors, that applies to you, whether you're African American like me, or you're Italian, Haitian, Dominican, Jamaican, Cuban, right? See, for me, as a Black woman, thinking about those that came before me, I think of how my ancestors came to America as slaves. They came to America stacked on top of one another on slave ships, enduring the stench of each other's urine, feces, and menstrual flow. See, I think of how many died on the journey and how those who did survive faced a very different life than the one they knew before. See, I think of how my ancestors stood on auction blocks. I think of how my ancestors picked cotton day in and day out in the hot sun and how they went without shoes and proper clothing. I think of how my ancestors had to make meals from scraps they received from Massa's kitchen. See, I think of the fact that most slaves were not even allowed to read or to write. See, I think of the fact that even after slavery ended, my African-American foreparents were not allowed to live in certain neighborhoods, to buy the home of their choice, even to eat at certain restaurants or go to certain schools or exercise the right to vote. See, thinking of all of that, I realized how necessary it was for my ancestors to fight hard for freedom. See, more than anything, contemplating on the struggles of those that came before me makes me wonder if I'm making my ancestors proud. Am I fulfilling the goals and dreams their sacrifices allow me now to achieve? So I want you to think about it. Whether you're African American and can identify with what I just shared, or your ancestors had a different plight altogether, we all stand on some very broad shoulders, right? And listen, we're here today because of the price that women that came before us paid, right? And I want you to think about it. Some of them were great writers like Ida B. Wells and Gwendolyn Brooks and Zora Neale Hurston. Entertainers like Josephine Baker and Dorothy Dandridge and Katherine Dunham and Diane Carroll, one of my favorites, right? Activists like Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. By the way, did you see the Harriet Tubman movie? I loved it. Some broke down the walls of government like Mary McLeod Bethune and Shirley Chisholm and Barbara Jordan, while others excelled in sports like Wilma Rudolph and Althea Gibson, or even phenomenal entrepreneurs like Madam C.J. Walker. See, there are countless other names that I didn't say that worked in math and science and gave speeches and listened to others' problems and broke down countless racial and gender barriers. See, these women, as well as many other sung and unsung heroes, paved our way. Now, in light of their struggles to pave the way for us, I sometimes wonder what our ancestors would have to say about us today. See, in some ways, I think that they would beam with pride over the accomplishments of women like media mogul Oprah, right? And surely they would cry and clap their hands to see that a descendant of slaves, Michelle Obama, stood as the First Lady of the United States. But I still wonder if those that came before us could come forward in time to talk to us, I wonder what they would say to us. And when I ponder that, when I think about that, I'm forced to look deeply inside myself for the answer. See, I'm reminded of all that our ancestors went through so that you and I can be and do anything we dream of. And I wonder if we're living up to the expectations, or whether they would think that they did what they did in vain. See, our ancestors not only maximized their potential for themselves, but they also did what they did to benefit those who come behind them, which is us. See, they had to fight hard to obtain the American dream, quote unquote. And we offer, and really we owe, our very own existence to their legacy. And so just like they paved the way for us, whose way are you paving? How is your life a light for others to come behind you? So for this special Women's History Month episode, my question to you is, how is your life, your work, a legacy in the making? See, in the Terry Tempest Williams quote that I read a few minutes ago, it's very powerful, right? The eyes of the future are indeed looking at us and praying that we see beyond our own time. Seeing beyond our own time requires us to live for tomorrow instead of just living for today. The legacy that you will leave depends on what you do today. Do you get that? Now listen, one of my favorite Bible verses, by the way, if you've been around me, I have so many favorite Bible verses, so I need to probably stop saying that. But anyway, is Matthew 5:16, which says, "Let your light so shine among men," and I say add women. "So let your light so shine among men and women that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." So if you would, and let me invite you to allow this episode to encourage you in this first quarter of 2020 to look beyond where you are into what's not just possible for you, but I want you to look at whose path you light as you do what you do and be who you be as you allow your light to shine. See, saying that makes me think of a poem. Obviously, I like poems, right? Do you guys remember Oprah's Legend Ball years ago? Well, let me share an excerpt from it. And the poem is called "We Speak Your Name" by Pearl Cleage. Do you guys remember this? "Because we are free women, born of free women, who are born of free women, back as far as time begins, we celebrate your freedom. Because we are wise women, born of wise women, who are born of wise women, we celebrate your wisdom. Because we are strong women, born of strong women, who are born of strong women, we celebrate your strength. My sisters, we gather here to speak your names. We are here because we are your daughters, as surely as if you had conceived us, nurtured us, carried us in your wombs, and then sent us out into the world to make our mark and see what we see and be what we be, but better, truer, deeper, because of the shining example of your own incandescent lives." Now listen, as I read that, my next thoughts turn to, how do I want to be remembered? See, I think of those who came before me, of course, and I think of all the opportunities that are provided to me because someone else paved the way. Listen, I think of the fact that I'm a Black woman from South Central LA with a master's degree. When, can I keep real with you? See, if my neighborhood had its choice, my life should have been defined by jail, drugs, or drive-by shootings. But somehow I carved out a different path. See, I don't take for granted the opportunity that I was able to obtain an education, especially since so many before me couldn't. I don't take for granted that I've been able to pursue a career because of those who blazed trails before me. Above all else, I don't take for granted that I actually reached out to actually start a business against all odds. See, it is these thoughts that have me thinking as we start Women's History Month, whose life am I impacting? I wonder if you've ever stopped to ask that same question to yourself, right? I wonder if you realize that when God placed you on this earth, he gave you a specific set of unique gifts and talents to serve a specific group of people, really to serve a specific purpose in this world. And I wonder if you're living into all of that fully and completely. And I'm asking that because I remember when I began to ponder this for myself. Now, this was back in 1993. And those of you that have heard my story, yes, I'm getting ready to tell it. See, my moment of really looking at this question from my own self happened in 1993 while I was in one of the greatest seasons of my life by everybody else's definition. See, what I realized in that moment for me in 1993 is I had spent years being okay with living into who others said I should do or be. Now, this was at a time when I had built an incredible career. Matter of fact, it was a career I had dreamed of ever since I was 7 years old. And at this time, I was living it. And that dream was to be in the entertainment industry. And there I was working for one of Viacom's largest cable networks. We had an outreach to 89 million homes on a weekly basis. From there, I was elevated into a casting position working with the #1 television show on Fox. Now, this job then led me to work with an entertainment group where together what we produced generated over $12.6 billion a year. And I said billion with a B. See, now on top of all that, now, if you know me like I think you know me, you know I was going to all the hot Hollywood parties. I was bumping elbows with all the stars, people you've seen and on TV and looked at on films. See, I was living the dream. But at the same time, I was feeling like I wish somebody would wake me up from this nightmare. Because I felt tormented by something being missing. Now, don't get me wrong, Hollywood was great, but I had this whisper inside of me saying, Nicole, there's something bigger waiting for you. But I had no idea what that was, right? And as I felt totally lost and confused about what I was going through and feeling like, how could I feel like something is missing when this is everything I have ever wanted? Now, in the middle of me feeling that, one of my great girlfriends invited me to volunteer for a program at our church one night. And as I walked into that sanctuary and I started working with young women in my church, I could see each woman one by one. I could see their eyes lighting up as I work with them. And as their eyes lit up, my heart lit up. And I realized, oh my God, in that very moment, in every conversation and every strategy I walked them through, my soul was alive. I realized that this is the exact thing I was meant to do. But here's the thing. I had no idea how to turn this thing that I was doing as a volunteer for free in my church into a career. Now, again, this was 1993. There was no such thing as a coach at the time. So I had no idea how I could get a paycheck for doing this thing. But the one thing I did know is that this thing was lighting up my soul like I had never felt before. So I had a decision to make. I could stay in this phenomenal career. I could keep my title. I could keep my name on all the good lists, right? Going to all the good parties and VIP too, right? I could live into the perception and public opinion of me, which was phenomenal, by the way. Or I could go after this rumble inside my belly. Now, in that moment, I didn't realize that stepping into my purpose, stepping into this thing that lit up my soul, I didn't realize that in that moment when I said yes to it, that I had no idea that over 500 young women were waiting for me. And because I said yes and stepped up and stepped out, each of those women that I worked with in my first program, those young women are now impactful in their own way, making their own mark in this world because I said yes. And I wonder who is waiting for your yes to come true. I'm going to say that one more time. Who's waiting for your yes to come true? See, I wonder if you realize that there are people out there that need you the same way I realized that my yes was bigger than me, at least on this side of the yes, because in the middle of it, I didn't realize it was bigger than me, right? Now, you know me well enough to know that I'm going to give you 4 steps to say yes, to begin to move past where you are, to say yes to the impact and influence you are meant to make in this world, so that we celebrate Women's History Month. And really, as we celebrate it, we're creating our own ripple effect in this world because, yes, you are a legacy in the making, right? Now, before I do that, I want to share with you another story from one of my favorite characters in the Bible. Now, this story is going to give you great context to the 4 steps I'm going to give you. And that character is Miss Esther. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. There are very few women in the Bible that they talk about, let alone there's only 2 books in the Bible that are named for a woman. Have you ever thought about that? Ruth and Esther, unless I'm missing something. And you guys, please feel free to tell me if I'm missing a Bible, right? A Bible chapter, right? And so obviously Esther's story is significant, right? So let me summarize her story so that you will have a full understanding of who she is and why her story is so significant. So, and this is the summary according to Nicole Roberts Jones. So if you want to go read Esther, it's really quick. I think it's only maybe 5 chapters in that book. It's a quick read, but let me summarize it for you here, right? So listen, there was a queen before Esther. Her name was Queen Vashti. And Queen Vashti was summoned to appear before her husband and his ministers at a banquet. Now, the Bible says that Queen Vashti disobeyed her husband. So she basically, and this is Nicole's interpretation, said, brother, have you lost your mind, right? Because the king was drunk and he wanted to parade her around in front of his boys inappropriately. I'm sure you can fill in the gap, right? So King, and I'm going to mess up his name, Ahasuerus, grew angry over her refusal to obey him and pretty much fired Queen Vashti, right? So to make a long story short, because he let her go, he had to find a new queen. So he started to audition his replacement, right? So beautiful women came from all over the land, kind of like The Bachelor. You know what I'm talking about, right? And Esther is one of those women. So her uncle Mordecai, who raised her, so Esther was an orphan, by the way. Her parents died when she was young. And so her uncle Mordecai became her caregiver, okay? And Mordecai worked in the palace, okay? So of course he wants the best for his niece, and he sees a wonderful opportunity for Esther to be one of those girls in the running, right? Now listen, the only problem is Esther is a Jew, and a Jewish girl could never, well, actually not even could, isn't even permitted to become queen. So what does Mordecai do? He changes her original name, which is actually Hadassah. He changes her name to Esther to protect her identity and her heritage. So to make a long story short, Esther obviously becomes queen, right? It's kind of like being from the south side of Chicago and then you become first lady. Hello, Michelle Obama, right? But Esther's story doesn't stop there. Now, after becoming queen, Esther is faced with a difficult choice. See, Haman, the king's right-hand man, hates the Jews. And so he has a plot to kill all of them. Keep in mind that they have no idea that Esther is a Jew. So when he finds out, when Mordecai finds out, Esther's uncle, he comes and appeals to Esther to use her power and position to save her people. And here's what he says, and this is coming directly out of Esther. This is Esther 4:14. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet, who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? See, then Esther realizes that all that has happened in her life has prepared her for that moment. Can you see that? Her story is a legacy in the making. And so here are the 4 takeaways I want to give you from Esther's story that will help you forge your own mark, right? Forge into leaving your mark in this world, right? So number one is don't settle. Now, here's the thing about Esther and Esther's story, which I love, is that she could have said, listen, I'm good. The king doesn't know I'm a Jew. She could have stayed right where she was, but she didn't settle. See, the thing you have to understand is God will let you live on whatever level you settle for. God will let you live on whatever level you settle for. See, we're going to see several times in the story of Esther where she had to make a choice to stay in comfort and do what she would do comfortably, or she could push into what's uncomfortable and do something different. And I'm worried if you realize that your comfort zone is killing your ambition. It's killing your dreams. That's right. You living in predictable, normal, comfortable is a place where ambition goes to die. Sure, you may have the career you always wanted, but you're done with that version of you. Your bio and your resume is complete. It's complete with where you currently stand. So my question to you is, what's next for you? And why am I so passionate about this? See, I know that moving outside of your comfort zone, it allows you to meet the next level of you. And so that, in essence, is what happened with Esther, right? And so I'll tell you more about that in a second. So here's the thing. When you want to say, hey, I don't want to settle, how you move into your next level is you've got to have a game plan. Now, listen, last month I was watching the Super Bowl with my husband, and something dawned on me at the end of the game. Now, if I say the wrong teams, bear with me. Don't miss the lesson. I believe what made the Kansas City Chiefs win, it wasn't because they were a better team. They just had better strategy. They had better plays. See, coaches have plays, and that's why as part of this episode, I'm gifting you with a playbook that will help you do the work of all 4 areas I'm outlining for you here. Now, hang tight. I'll tell you how you get it in a few minutes. But I want you to get why I'm gifting this to you. Listen, A playbook in sports is a resource used by coaches and athletes that houses particular maneuvers and plays they use during the game, right? See, members of the team study that playbook so that when they're in the midst of a heated moment, they're under pressure, they have the insight and knowledge necessary to execute the play and win. See, the actions any athlete takes are deliberate because they know what to do. They have their playbook. So listen, in the same vein, we perform, right? In our careers, we perform in life. See, if you have a dream or a meaningful goal, why wouldn't you need a playbook? See, just like an athlete's playbook, we need to have plays, specific acts, maneuvers. We need to improve our performance. See, what maneuvers and or plays will help you be successful at you going after what's next for you? See, we can achieve almost anything when we get deliberate and we channel our energy every day. And that starts with having a playbook. So again, hang tight. I'm going to share with you but how to get your playbook because I got one for you, right? But listen, let me give you the next step you must activate to truly leave your mark on this world. So number one is don't settle. Don't settle and get the strategy to move your gift forward, right? Number two is you've got to look at who's on your team. Now, there's a Bible verse, 1 Corinthians 15:33, that says, don't be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. And if you think back to the story where I told you that the king summoned his wife and had her come, his boys were around him encouraging him to do that. And then even Haman, his right-hand man, who has his plot out against all the Jews. I wonder, has a king ever looked around and really looked at the people that are talking to him? Just like I wonder, and I'm going to say this, and I might step on a toe or two, if the people that were around Michael Jackson, if they were really talking to him and pushing him and saying, man, what are you doing? Or were they yes men? You know what I'm talking about. See, I think the king in Esther's story had all yes men around him. He didn't have people around him that would push him into his greatness, that would speak truth, that would tell him, are you crazy? There's a saying a couple years ago from a reality show, who's going to check me, boo? Well, he needed somebody to check him, boo. Right? Whereas when you look at who Esther had around her uncle Mordecai, by the way, some versions say uncle, some say cousin, but they were related, right? Look at how her uncle Mordecai nurtured her and pushed her into her greatness. And the king's people were taking him into bad places. So you've really got to look at who's influencing you. See, no one can be their best self by themselves. So the question is, who do you need to help you evolve into your next level? And in whatever your goals and dreams are, who can help you evolve into the next level for you to go get it? This is why one of the things you will need to go after, that legacy in the making inside of you, one of the things you're going to need is a coach. See, God put the talent in, but it takes a coach to pull it out. So if Serena Williams needs a coach, if Simone Biles needs a coach, if LeBron James needs a coach, do I need to keep going? Then why don't you think you need a coach? Now, in addition to a coach, you have to look at who is around you and how they're adding to your dreams and your desires and your goals. And that's a whole workshop in and of itself. But the second part of your playbook that I'm going to gift you with will help you walk through an exercise where you look at who is on your team. And then number three, you got to take a knee. Now, yes, I got that topic from Colin Kaepernick, and this is beyond his protest against police brutality. It's a conversation around the reflection on the power of God's presence. Now, listen, if I go back to Esther's story, and I'm trying to find the Bible verse right now. So in Esther, here's the thing she says. After Mordecai tells her about her husband's plot to kill all the Jews, she says back to Uncle Mordecai, she says, go gather all the Jews who are present and fast for me. Neither eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise. And so I will go to the I will go to the king, which is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. That's Esther 4:16. So in that moment, when Esther doesn't know what to do, when something so scary is in front of her, what does she do? She takes a knee. She says, I need all of us praying. By the way, that also speaks to who's around you, right? But she takes a knee. And see, it amazes me the number of successful women that I meet that share with me that they feel like their life is lacking meaning, or they have somehow they feel disconnected. They feel off. Kind of like when you're driving around in your car and you need an oil change or a tune-up, something just feels like something is not working right. And can I tell you that the reason you feel off or anything like that is because you need a soul alignment. See, there are some things we can only get in the presence of God. See, there's power in his presence. There is power in his presence. And a person who's living a life, who goes to church on Sunday, watching sermons on YouTube, or being able to recite Bible verses, those things are great. But if you don't spend time in his presence, if you don't spend time with God, you're missing all that's available to you. It's like having a phone, an iPhone, a smartphone. You know, you can surf the web, you can email, you can text, you can view videos, you can record videos, you can take pictures, you can download all kind of apps that do all kind of things, but you only use your phone to make phone calls. That's all you do. Now, that's just a waste of a great resource, right? It's underutilization of what you have. And as your friend, if I saw that you were doing that, I would say, girl, do you really know what all your phone can do? Well, in the same vein, here's what I would say to you in regards to your spiritual, your soul alignment. Do you really know what all God can do? Do you really know that God wants to give you direction? He wants to show you what's next for you, and not just show you. He wants to walk you through it. He wants to show you how to live abundantly above all you could ask or think. But it starts with you getting your spiritual direction by being in his presence. So listen, in Esther's story, she shows that. Listen, God is not even mentioned in the book of Esther, not even once. But Esther was clear that in this particular situation, a heavenly response was needed for an earthly situation. See, Esther knew she needed direction. And when we need direction, prayer opens the portal for spiritual direction. It removes distractions and it gives us clarity, which moves us to step number 4. If we want to truly be a legacy in the making, we've got to be willing to risk it all to gain it all. Remember, Esther said at the end of verse 4:16, if I perish, I perish. See, Esther knew, of course, that going to the king unsolicited could be her death by itself, let alone when she tells the king, hey, I'm a Jew, right? See, before making a life or death situation, she calls her people to join her for a 3-day fast so that she can get direction from God. She took a knee and she got the strategy from being in God's presence. And then she followed that. Now, here's in the Bible, and this is me paraphrasing. So here's the direction she got. Following the fast, she put on her best royal robes and approached the king, right? And listen, she first had a beautiful feast for the king. And at the first, I believe there was 3. The first feast, and she didn't know she was going to do all 3 at the beginning, right? But that's how God works. So in the middle of the first one, the king goes, oh, well, you can have anything. No one's ever done anything like this for me. And she goes, well, I want to throw you another feast tomorrow night. And she does a second feast. Now, I don't know if she were me, I'd be so scared in the middle of that. I'd be shaking. I know my husband would be like, baby, what's wrong? I would not have been able to keep a straight face. But that's why when you take a knee, the confidence and security you have when God has your back. Anyway, so to make a long story short, she throws 3 feasts. And so following the last feast, right, she tells her husband that Haman has his plot to kill her people. Oh, and I'm a Jew, boo, right? And so in a moment when she says, if I perish, I perish, what happens? Haman gets killed. And all of that is because she was willing to take a risk. Her people are saved and Haman is the one that gets killed. Now, listen, living in your comfort zone is all about doing what is safe and easy. However, taking risk is necessary for growth. It's necessary to expand your territory and achieve success. It's about doing the hard thing that brings the greatest joy. Now, listen, my favorite part of the whole Esther story is in verse 4:14 when her uncle Mordecai says to her, yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So my question to you is, what would happen if you stopped settling for where you are? If you said yes to go after your breathtaking future? In what ways is someone waiting for your yes, for their dreams to come true for such a time as this? So if I'm stepping on your toes a little, good, but I do want to give you a free gift to support you. Now, in the month of February, I did a special 4-week online training called Plan B. And in it, I walked through in more detail each of those 4 steps that I just gave you. So if you want to watch each of those trainings, you can find them on my YouTube channel at nrjnetwork.com. Okay. But more than watching that, I want to gift you with the playbook I gave out that week so that you can be in the work of drafting your own legacy. You can get your copy of the playbook at yourplanbplaybook.com. Now listen, to the playbook, I walk you through drafting your plan around each of the 4 steps that I just walked through. Again, you can get your playbook at yourplanbplaybook.com. And you can also click on it in the show notes here. Now listen, just don't be alarmed. When you go to yourplanbplaybook.com, it's going to take you to my Facebook Messenger. Okay. And it's going to give you prompts. So it's going to ask you some questions to get you to your playbook. Now, let me say one other thing, because I know you're saying your plan B. So if you know Esther's story, you know that Esther was a plan B because she was a second wife. Many of you, the career you're currently sitting in is no longer big enough for your gift. And so for me, I had to have that same realization. And so I had to go after plan B because I didn't have a plan B. I only had a plan A. And so that's why I call it yourplanbplaybook.com, because it's time for you to go after your next level. It doesn't mean you have to shift careers, but it does mean it's time for you to do something different. Why? Because there are people waiting for your yes. Now, listen, I'm giving you this Plan B playbook as a gift because I know that as a successful woman, you're so busy being busy, so much so that you don't often stop long enough to sit and ponder what's next for you. You don't sit in the reflection and quiet time you need to do the deep soul work that it's going to take for you to make the pivot you need to make to go after not who you are, but who you have not yet become. So I want to encourage you as we sit in Q1 of 2020, or whenever you're listening to this episode, that you do this work now, that you don't settle and wait for the right time, but you have to know, my brilliant sister, now is your right time, or else you wouldn't be listening to this episode. All right. So do the work and allow your pivot to be someone else's blessing. Do the work and allow your pivot to be the yes you need to go after the next best version of you. Do the work and allow your pivot to be the light on the path so that others will blaze a trail behind you because you stepped up and stepped out and said yes. Do the work and allow your pivot to be the yes you need to go after your breathtaking future. So let me end this episode with this. Recently, Tracy Ellis Ross won an NAACP Image Award, and she shared some words in her speech that I want to share with you, and I hope that they touch your heart as much as they touch mine as I heard her say them. So she started with this quote by Audre Lorde that says, "We as women often have been expected to be all things to all people and to speak everyone else's position but our very own." And then Tracy went on to say after that quote, "Our experiences and stories are way too often told through interpreters and historians, systems and laws. See, they've told us that we need a man's voice or power to name our existence, to validate our experiences, that we need a son to carry on our legacy, to etch our impact in time. But we get to define ourselves, not through how others imagine us, but through how we see ourselves. Even our truths make you uncomfortable." And to Tracy's powerful words, I add this: if your light makes others uncomfortable, simply hand them a pair of shades. I need you to be committed to no longer settle or dim your light so that others feel comfortable in your presence. But so that I want you to do that and shine so that others are lifted by your ability to live as the highest and best version of you. So as you say yes to all that is rumbling inside of you, your light lights the path for others to come behind you. And in the same token, you give them permission to equally let their light shine. And that is how your life becomes a legacy in the making. Listen, we are all here. We've got to do something impactful before we leave this world. So let's go and do it. So to that, I say to you, shine on, my sister, shine on. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Amplify Your Brilliance. Now, I want you to walk away from these sessions with value. So answer either one or all 3 of these questions. Number 1, what was your greatest takeaway? Number 2, what will you do different as a result of what you heard? See, you may have heard something you've already heard, or you may have learned something new. Either way, don't take the insight that was shared with you for granted. So commit to doing one thing different as a result of what you heard. Number 3, what was confirmation for you? What did you hear that confirmed you're on the right path? See, I want you to take a moment and celebrate you. Too often in our journey, we focus on what we're not doing and we forget to celebrate what we are doing. So I want you to share with us something that showed you that you're on the right path. Now again, share. Share either answer number 1, what was your greatest takeaway? Number 2, what will you do different? Or number 3, what was confirmation for you? And share it in our Facebook community. Go to thebrilliancetribe.com and use the hashtag #AmplifyYourBrilliance. See, each experience we encourage, support, and celebrate as a community. It allows us to expand in possibility and wisdom, in encouragement and love. Now, we've invited you into this community to deepen our journey with being the answer somebody needs and being committed to your next level. So until the next time, be extraordinary, be unapologetic, be bodaciously you, go and amplify.